and you find it helpful, please turn in it to Acts chapter 27. This is where we will spend our time. Paul is at an interesting place in his life at this point, and it's a place that really all of us at some point come to. Everybody. I was walking with my uncle, this is several years ago, toward the end of my mother's stay at Baptist Village. She was there for about 7 years, maybe 8. And she had suffered a stroke in 2002 and had become fairly well housebound, and then kept getting worse with pneumonias and things like that until finally she had to go to Baptist Village. And my uncle, who was her brother, lived in Fernandina, and he would call me once a month or every 3 weeks and say, "Rip, could we all go and have lunch with your mom?" And I'd say, "Sure." So we would all go and have lunch at Baptist Village with my mother. And we were walking out one day from the room. We had just Mom had gone back. She didn't like to stay out of the room very long. And so once she was done eating, she was ready to go back to familiar surroundings. And we were leaving, and my uncle said, "This is a sad place." And I said, "Well, yes, it is kind of a sad place." I didn't know what he meant. And I said, "What do you mean when you say it's a sad place?" He said, "Well, this is your last stop. This is your last stop. When you come into this place like your mom, you've come to that last stop." Paul is headed for his last stop. So let's take a look at this text and see what it would teach us here. I'll begin reading in chapter 27, verse 1. When it was decided that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia. We put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian, a Greek, from Thessaloniki was with us. The next day we landed at Sidon. Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends that they might provide for his needs. And from there we put out to sea again and sailed past Cyprus because the winds were against us. When we had sailed into the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra, which is in Lycia. There the centurion found a larger Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. We made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off of Cnidus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course any longer, we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite Salmone. We moved along the coast with great difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. Now, Paul is moving toward a destiny. He's moving toward Rome. You remember back in Acts 23, Jesus came to him. He was in the Antonia's castle next to the temple where the Romans had taken him under custody. And Jesus came to him in the night and said, "You've witnessed for me before the Gentiles, now you will go to Rome." And so this is his destiny. This is not even a question for Paul. He's got some people with him, though, as he travels. Aristarchus and Luke are with him. We know Luke's with him because everything here says "we." Every time this is spoken of, the writer is included in the group of people. Aristarchus and Luke don't have to be there. They've neither one any obligation to this. Now, Luke is kind of Paul's chronicler or secretary. Aristarchus, the Romans would have said to Paul, he can't come because he's got no business here. There's nothing he's not. Aristarchus would have had to have gone as Paul's slave. Now these guys, Aristarchus and Luke, are giving something up. They are giving up their liberty in order to travel with Paul. And from the point of view of just a human being, I mean, I look at my own life and I think, wow, that's a big deal. I mean, you jump on a ship and go sailing off with Paul, knowing that you're leaving your family and everything else behind in order to do this. From a human perspective, I would say they're giving up a lot. However, from the perspective of somebody who has chosen to follow Jesus, they're really not giving much up. That's an interesting perspective which I want us to keep in mind. Nobody Nobody, and me included, I can say this with total confidence, nobody wants to be a Job. Nobody. Nobody wants to, in order to glorify God here on this earth. We think about glorifying God in the things of being nice or doing things that are nice or being kind or whatever, giving money perhaps, doing a service project. We all look at it, I think, fairly well as a temporary condition that's going to come and go, and we'll go back to our normative, comfortable lives after we have given of ourselves in some way. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying there's something very different that Paul's life seems to say to me. Paul is doing something here with his life that doesn't have that open-endedness about it like we would look at. Oh, I'm going to go do a mission trip. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, but I'm going to come back home. I'm coming back to America where there's the flat screen TV and whatever else that I really like here. Paul doesn't have that option. How is it that Paul is doing this? Again, nobody wants to be a Job. Nobody. To glorify God in this world, none of us, me included, wants to be like Job. However, we never know what God might be calling us to. Paul has a totally different method here, and this is where I want us to funnel all this down today in the practical world where we live, because most of us are not going to become foreign missionaries. So, how do we live in this world, in this time, in the life that God has given us, in the setting that God has placed us in? How do we live in this way of Paul? How do we do it? Paul is like this. There's an old fable, and I'm going to say, I don't know where this fable comes from. It's very old. Don't even know who wrote it, but it goes this way. This is Paul's perspective on life, and I think it should be ours as well. How many of you are, everybody, don't raise hands, everybody's familiar with the high alpine mountain goats. Everybody's seen the documentaries of these goats that a rock sticks out this far, and that's sufficient for them to stand on it on a near vertical cliff. And you see them running up and down, rocks falling as they go, just like squirrels on the tree bark. They don't seem to have any fear about the fact that it's a 1,000-foot sheer drop to the death if they slip. And they're on hooves, which makes it even more. These aren't soft pads. They're not sneakers. I mean, they're hard hooves. And somehow these animals are able to move about. Well, in this fable, 2 of these mountain goats come to a trail that's worn by the goats on a cliff. And it's a 1,000-foot sheer drop on one side, and it's straight up on the other. This is the only place they're going to pass. And they come face to face to one another on this pass. One of them is a large ram. The other one is a much smaller female. What are they going to do? Well, in nature, who cares? But the female goat right off to her death. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, right? Don't lions, when a male lion comes into a pride and the cubs from the older pride leader are there, he kills the leader or drives him off and then kills all the cubs so that the females will become receptive and they'll start all over with a new bunch of cubs. That's just the way nature is. Nobody thinks anything of it. The lion's not murdering the cubs, right? A lion kills a zebra. It's not murdering the zebra. It's just doing what's in nature. So, if the mountain goat said, hey, off with you, who cares? It's no big deal, right? That's just nature playing out. But in this fable, the big mountain goat lays down on the trail, and the little goat walks across its back, and they both pass safely. That's what Paul is doing. That's what Paul's whole life has become. He is this mountain goat laying down. Now they take this journey. Keep that in mind as we go today. They take this journey, and if you have ever studied the history of sailing at this era of history, they are sailing in Phoenician square sail ships. That's what they're called. This is why all the military vessels had the under-rowers, banks of oars with slaves chained to them underneath, because square sail ships don't tack very well. We have ships nowadays, if you're a sailor, I'm not, but I know a little bit about it. If you sail, we now possess sail technology, keel technology, and rudder technology that we can sail almost directly into the wind. The slightest bit of angle is sufficient to drive the boat forward. They couldn't do that then. Square sail ships, if they're going to tack, they're going to be making almost 90-degree turns back and forth, zigzagging, trying to get forward in the ocean. So, if this little boat they start out on from Adramyttium, it's what's known as a coastal vessel. It's not designed to cross the open water. It's designed to sail in sight of the shore. So they would transport goods like it's the same thing as a container ship versus a tractor trailer. This is the tractor trailer. It's designed to just deliver the boxes from the container ship to the ports of call. They get on that one, they sail out to an island, the winds are contrary, they get there, and then Julius puts them upon what's known as an Alexandrian grain ship, 3 times the size. And so they get on, this one is designed for the open water, but the winds are so bad. I've seen maps of this journey, and in the journey there's a section right before they reach Cnidus where the picture is just like that. That's the way the line looks, because that's what they would have to do. Even in this large Alexandrian grain ship, they would have to sail in a zigzag pattern for a long time. So a trip that normally would take them a day might take them a week. They just don't have any options here. Now, this is what I want us to focus on. And by the way, did you know that these guys, if they could not see the sun, the moon, the stars, or the land, they don't have any way to know where they are in the water. They don't have a chronometer. They can't say we've been sailing for X number of hours in this direction. They don't have any of that. So if you get out in the open water at this time in history in one of these Phoenician square sail ships and you get into trouble, you're really in trouble. This is not a little thing. Well, they make it to Fair Havens. Now, what I want to focus on today is how do we view things in our own lives when things go either well or badly? How do we view what God's will is when we experience things that go well or they go badly? What is God saying through these circumstances? I see 3 categories that we put things in mostly. And so let's just take just a minute and walk with me here through the categories. The first category is, and this may not be the first one for you, there's no order here, but this is the first one that comes to my mind, is that we see bad things as some kind of test. God is allowing us to go through something, whether a sickness or trouble at work or difficulty with something in our lives, and He is allowing that to test us, to prove us in some way. Could be. I'm not saying any of these are wrong. I worked with a contractor in Pennsylvania. He was 64 when he became a believer, and I came to work for him when he was 65. So he's very new at following Jesus, and everything was a test for him. I don't care what happened. If he spilled his coffee, if he got something on his shirt, if he slammed something in the car door, if he tripped, if he broke something, it didn't matter what was going on. He'd say it out loud, God's testing me. That's a perspective. Another one is God is punishing us if things go badly. I must have done something yesterday or this morning, or I must have thought something, and now that thought I had this morning, God is punishing me for it. That thing I did last week, I'm still living in the punishment that God brings to correct my bad behavior. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's a perspective. Here's one that is very common to Americans. If things go well, God is endorsing what I'm doing. That's how we figured out, right? If the check comes in, God loves me. He's got to be, man. I'm living for the Lord so well that God's going to send me the check. I mean, if I take it from a lot of the TV programs, that's exactly how it works. Or I've given money here, and now the lottery ticket that I didn't even buy is in my possession with the number on it. And I'm going to get something good here because I've I've done good. God's happy with me. Paul's take is very different here. I mean, at any point in this series of events, Paul has spent about 20 years, I just use the word that it is, suffering. Now, at any point in that chain of events, and this too, right? They get in the boat. He tells them, remember, he told them before they left, said, this isn't going to go well. We're going to have trouble. We're going to be shipwrecked. We're going to lose people. We're going to lose the cargo. They didn't listen. They're going out to sea anyhow, even though it's a time of the year when they really should not do that. Paul's still part of that. He might know all this, but he's still part of it. He's getting on the boat. He's doing these things. He's participating in all of this. Friedrich Nietzsche, the atheist philosopher. Funny that we should quote an atheist philosopher here in church, but he said something very profound. He said, human beings can go through many a what if they know the why. I think there's something to that. Maybe we should learn from Paul here. What would be the lesson? What would Paul's life communicate to us? I can tell you what it communicates to me. It says to me, until God brings what we're doing to a full stop, or He gives us some kind of blessing that is so obvious that we can't not go that way, we should just keep doing what we're doing. Just keep going. Paul just keeps going. Now, this is a serious question, because I'm going to say that anybody who is a believer, who's got sensitivity with regard to their walk with God, wants to know, how do I do God's will? The question's a little bit, if we're honest, deceptive. Because most of God's will we already know, and most of it we're failing at times to do. So much of it. I am. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm the only one. But there is an intersection in everybody's life, many intersections in any given day, between the will of God and how we are living and what we're doing. Every life has these intersections. Every moment, that once we say yes to Jesus, every moment becomes a sacred moment. There are no mundane moments any longer for anybody, no matter what it is we find ourselves doing. You see, we're soulish creatures, and God's purpose for us is to make our souls as we go through this world. That's one of the reasons we don't just say yes to Jesus and have a poofing party where people just poof into a cloud and disappear when they say yes to the Lord. I mean, if otherwise, what are we doing here? There was a man who was a few years back. I don't know how long eBay's been with us, but I remember listing something on eBay when it was brand new. I had to give a guy, I bought him breakfast so he would do it for me because I didn't have a clue how to do it. And there was a guy who listed his soul on eBay. He's going to sell his soul on eBay. Well, they put it up, and eBay didn't catch it for several days. I don't know how long bids usually go, for a week or a month or whatever. And they caught it. The eBay people said, "Wait a minute, we can't do this." So they contacted him. They said, "Okay." And the guy said, "I'm an atheist, but I want to sell my soul on eBay." Well, eBay contacted him and said, "Okay, if you're an atheist, then you don't even believe you have a soul. And if there are no souls, you've got nothing to sell. If people do have souls, eBay doesn't allow people to sell parts of their body on eBay. So we're withdrawing it." Well, by the way, he got to $20.50 in bids for people bidding for his soul. I mean, he was starting to have some financial success here. But we're soulish creatures, and God works with us via that part of who we are. Jesus said it so well. He said it to the disciples in Matthew 16. If anybody wants to follow me, if they want to save their life, they've got to lose it. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? If that is true, and I believe it's true, then somehow that's got to be a good thing. Somehow that's got to be a good thing. Otherwise, it's a cause for which we just sacrifice something. But it's got to be a good thing. Something's got to happen in us because we choose to say, this day, this moment, I'm going to lose my life in order to save it. We're making a decision. They have the capacity, science has the capacity. Now, I hate that when I do that. I use the word they in this ubiquitous sense that just covers everything. Science has the capacity, medical science has the capacity today to image a brain, your brain, my brain. I don't know what, they might not see anything if they imaged mine. It might just be a blank blob. It's, what's going on in there? Nothing. But they image your brain when it's functioning. Show you a card with blue. This lights up. See, that's lighting up. He sees blue or she sees blue. They imaged people's brains when they were praying. They were Christians, and they said, we want to see what happens. The prefrontal cortex lit up. That's the part of the brain that's primarily concerned with empathy and judgment. The superior parietal lobe, which is a part of the brain that's concerned with self, was completely dormant during prayer. There's something going on. Something real is happening when we're praying. God is doing something. Paul has found what I would say is the secret here. Remember a few years back, the book and the little movie that came out called The Secret? You can go to Netflix right now. If you've got a Netflix account, you can watch it. Amazon's got it too, The Secret. And Oprah and a bunch of people of that ilk were real foamed up. You get the book, you watch the video, you'll know how to live your life in perfect. You've got the secret. Well, it's come and gone. Nobody cares about that now. Now it's a free video in Amazon and Netflix. Nobody's watching it anymore. It obviously wasn't quite the secret everybody thought it was. Paul has found the secret. He really has. It's not saying to you and to me that we've got to lay down and become a missionary. That's not what's being said. What's being said here is you and I have in any given day, in any given hour, opportunities to lay our life down for somebody else. Whether it's a spouse or a child or a relative or an acquaintance or a person who's serving you in a store or at a restaurant, anywhere. You and I are being given opportunities to lose our life in order to save our life. And in order to be as the mountain goat is for the other mountain goat. To allow ourselves to be walked over so that somebody else might be saved. That's exactly what Paul is doing. And it doesn't happen overnight. This is not something that you and I will just leave here today and everybody's got it now and we'll just start practicing it perfectly. That's not going to happen. It's going to take something. One of the things it's going to take is maybe we listen to God somehow. Maybe we allow God to speak into our lives in some way. There was a Norwegian piano tuner at the Hardanger Fjord, as we say it, a concert hall, tuning the piano before a performance that evening, which they always do. Anytime you go to a concert hall, if there's a grand piano, it's being tuned the afternoon before the concert. And he was tuning it, and right across from the concert hall is a power plant on the river, the Hardanger Fjord. Well, he called the power plant and said, you've got to shut down the turbines because I can't hear to tune the pianos that are here. That's a lot of where we live, isn't it? It's noisy. And we don't take the time to just say, you know what, Lord, I really want to hear what you're saying today to me. What am I to do this day? What am I to do this moment? Nothing is going to substitute for that in anybody's life. I mean, if we're thinking to ourselves, I'd really love to know what God's will is, well, maybe we'd have to do something to find out what that is. And there's a reward on the end of it. This is an incentivized program. It really is. When we lay our life down, we find ourselves saving our life. God does things in us when we give up something of ourselves to lay down so that somebody can pass over us. That's just the way it is. God does that for us. Paul has found the secret. That's why Paul can be in these circumstances and really live, not just exist. And we have the same opportunity.